Are Gen G the biggest chokers in Valorant history? Because you see, in the 2 games that they've lost to be eliminated from Masters Toronto, against Wolves, they were up 9-3 on split and managed to lose 13-11. And then on Sunset, they were up 8-4 at the half, but managed to only win 1 round in the second half, which was actually the eco after losing a pistol, and lost 13-9. But then against G2 on map 3 Icebox, it got even worse. Because you see, Gen G were up 11-4. They did not win a single round from this point and would lose 9 in a row to lose 13-11. So let's actually start off with the round that this comeback begins with, right? Which is round 16, where they're 11-4 up. Obviously, Gen G are feeling pretty good, and they're going to go for a pretty bold, brave plan here of, they're going to 4-stack here. Unfortunately, they don't destroy the dart, so that means that, their plan kind of gets foiled early on just there. But keep note of that, right? That, that's very clearly, they had a plan for this round, right? We're going to 4-stack here, and then interestingly, they got Killjoy stuff behind it. Now, actually, Foxy recalls this alarm bot, I think, which I don't really understand, because I actually quite like the plan of being aggressive here, Killjoy stuff behind it, and you actually, just all rotate. But either way, it doesn't really matter that much, because what happens next is that you're going to get Munchkin here. He's on this line with an outlaw, and he's actually going to find the first 2 kills. He's going to tag up Trent just there, who actually had full shields, but he gets the kill on both of them, right? And now he's going to get a little bit, a bit unfortunate, you might say, with the timing of that. Actually, an Omen smoke just dropped, and then, the orb is just ever so slightly off the timing. So, maybe a bit lackadaisical, maybe a bit unfortunate, but whatever, right? They're in a 4v3. It's a decent spot. But now, they give G2 a lot of respect here, Gen G, right? If you take a look at what's going on, obviously, they've rotated across because, the Sage Wall is here and they've got a kill here and it looks like they're coming to B. And you see that initially we are watching for this, but we just kind of don't wait long enough. And they feel like they've lost maybe a bit more space than they truly had, to be honest here, Gen G. And they're playing it pretty cautiously overall, right? Which isn't necessarily a terrible mistake, but it does allow Jorgmo here to, go and fetch an ult orb, then go and plant, and then go back and res, right? So, maybe this particular circumstance, they maybe played a little bit too cautiously, but overall, it's not a disaster, and it's still a 4v4. But now, on the retake, unfortunately for them, they are going to get kind of destroyed here by Leaf's late flank.
They need it now more than ever. Gen G are slowly getting a grip onto the site. Leaf is that backup policy, but this is explosive. Dash cross and forwards as an operator in his bloody hands. Matters not. The weaponry. Give Texture a spoon. He's going to make you mince meat. Going to be denying this one though. G2 getting onto the plan, wrapping around. And the situation is pressing right now for Kairon. Now it's 1-4 starting to the open. Isolates the first kill. Shot darts, lay it down, and Trent saves the day.
Okay, so Gen G did lose that round, but it wasn't a complete disaster, right? Yeah, it was a 5v3 for a brief moment, but, they did use a res, they did use the Silver ult. It's okay to lose rounds like that, when your opponent uses 2 big ults and you don't use any, right? It's understandable that they might have lost that round. However, as we skip forward, now let's take a look at the next full buy round, right? And this one I think is a little less excusable because what you'll see at the start of this round, right? You tell me here necessarily, what Gen G's, plan in the round is. Okay, they start off with a bit of aggression over here towards A. Again, with these 2 just here. But again, they aren't able to destroy the dart, and eventually they get pushed back. Okay, yeah, that's fine. The thing is in this round is they do have some big ults, right? You've got Munchkin and you've got Foxy9's ult here, right? So you do have some big ults to play with. But this to me just looks like, a kind of very standard, very normal setup, from Gen G overall. The turret gets destroyed in mid, so they start worrying about that. But they don't come up with a plan to, reactively push mid or get any information there. They're just playing a very sort of standard round overall, right? And I think that this was maybe part of the problem, that they got to these rounds a lot of the time, and it did feel a little like we're just kind of playing a standard round and hoping that our players are good enough, to then win that round, right? And in this case, you'll see here that Texture is gonna, actually start to rotate, but then a smoke comes in, so he comes back, and he actually does get the chance essentially, get them in a good spot. He just happens to miss that shot just there, right? So you could say, in a sense, they did have a chance to win this round, but it just didn't happen. And now that they've seen the Texture up, G2 actually decide to fully rotate, but Texture is actually ahead of this, right? He's actually fully ahead of this. Now they do use their Silver ult here. Which doesn't find anyone, but I can understand that they are lacking some information here, right? Which again is going to be a problem. Now another problem that they had is if we come back earlier in the round, Foxy9 actually has an alarm bot here, but he decides to recall it, right? Which I think later on in this round does make this a little bit harder here for Munchkin, because now he doesn't have this kind of information of if people are actually, you know, coming up to him. And you'll see, obviously now Munchkin has his Viper's Pit, right? So you've got 2 ults here, and yeah, you've wasted just overall here and it didn't find much value, but you know, you've still got these 2 ults here. You know, G2 are essentially panicking, you know, 24 seconds left. They are just running it, you know, last second towards B and hoping essentially they can get there. You know, we got a Nano Swarm here, we got Killjoy Lockdown, we got Viper Spit. You know, this should be a win here for Gen G, but of course it isn't.
Now could just be lying in wait. Back towards it. Dart not going to be dealt with. He's trying to find that timing. He does press himself forwards into a pit at least, but he's gone down and out texture. Trying to get instinctual as a dart. Okay, wall in his face and a dash backwards. Jonah P at least finds Foxy9. The spike is planted. Mad dash.
I mean, so far this has been the biggest fumble with the ultimates that you could possibly ask for G2. It's actually allowed them an opportunity to right the ship and avoid the snowball.
Texture creeping. Leaf has his teammates back. He'll step no further. Gen G still trying to make a go of things. But time has bled away from them here at G2 in the midst of all of that chaos somehow.
And this, I think, really was the round that kind of lost Gen G the game. Because when you have a round like this where you've got 3 big ults and they've got none, it's not just the way that it plays out here, but it is to do with the start of the round again, right? That they didn't have like a clear plan of how they were going to use those ults, right? They weren't playing retake on either side with Killjoy Lockdown. They weren't doing anything, right? They were just playing a very standard round. And again, Munchkin here, you know, he has the right idea, but just way too slow, right? Like, he should be, in his mind, he should be like, if they come to B, I'm just going to pit straight away, right? It should almost be one of those situations where, in reality, when the time gets low, you ideally would say, hey, you should be over this side, and literally just, like, jiggle peeking this, and if you see, with your ult in hand, right? And then you're just going to pit this, like, if you see them. Instead, you know, he puts himself in this position where, you know, he is liable to get hit by this dart. He actually does a good job to avoid the dart, but, like, again, he's put himself in a spot where he's just a little slow in realizing, you know, what he should do here, and then by the time he does it, you know, he ends up dying there. Not great. So, and also, by the way, during this, right, we also had lockdown, but Foxy dies here, swinging out in just a second, kind of after Texture gets this kill. You know, he dies here to Jonah P, which is fine. I don't think that's a terrible thing, but you know, just the fact that we didn't have a great plan here, the fact that, you know, we ended up using a Silver ult, we ended up using a Viper's Pit and essentially getting no value from them, those are big moments in games like this, because often, when you're up this big, you will get a big ult round where your opponent doesn't have the ults to respond, and you have to win that round. And as we got further and further and closer to this comeback fully happening, Gen G started to panic more and more and more. Okay, let's take a look at round 22. Now, this is with 13 seconds left to play in the round. And often I don't start, you know, these clips before, you know, like at this point in the round. Just take a look at this, though. Just take a look at what happens, right? What are they doing here? Okay, I mean, just take a look at this. So the time is ticking down, right? The barriers aren't down yet. You can see that. We started with 3 on A. We decided to completely cancel the plan. We now have 1 second left. Look at the map. So the round starts now, right? So the barriers go down there. Look at the map. Look at the map when the barriers have gone down. We have 1 Nano Swarm down, and that's our only Killjoy util. By the way, this is a full buy round. This is our full buy, okay? And this is what the map looks like as we start the round. We had 3 people on A here for the majority of it, and then last minute decided to come to B. Foxy9, you run away, you go to A instead. This round, and then take a look at how this round then plays out. This round was literally over before the barriers dropped, and this is a full buy.
Is looking to equalize.
They're moving forward. It's a slow, relentless march over towards the A side, and a kill. Collected for Valen once more. Added up. Total it overall. It's full side control now for G2. Slight gap. Potentially over. But a pit now is going to be removing all of those sight lines. How do Gen G play into this? They're backing away.
No way.
They're backing away. They're saving.
Giving up already?
They're giving up the round.
Yeah, that's how they lost a round. They lost a round because they literally weren't ready when the barriers dropped. They didn't have a plan. That is criminal. That should never happen. When it's 11-10 on a full buy round and that's how you lose, that's unreal. And obviously, as we got closer and closer to this thing fully happening, Gen G, you know, the panic kept coming. But the thing is, it's not like they had no plans whatsoever, right? So this is the very next round after that disaster. You know, they are talking about, like, Omenal, you know, they're pinging this, you actually can't see it. It's kind of above this. They're pinging spawn, you know, for where that Omenal might potentially go, right? It's not like they have no plan whatsoever, but it did feel a little like once, you know, the initial barriers dropped and, you know, nothing happened, you know, or things, you know, didn't go exactly how they thought it would at the start of the round. Like here, there was no Omenal at the start. Then they just didn't know what to do, right? And this is a really good example. And this is good by Valorant, right? I really, really like this, that you know the other team is panicking. You know that they are panicking. So what do? You just take A, and then you call a complete freeze, right? Because here's the thing, you know that they're terrified of their own shadow. They're not taking any space. They're not doing anything, you know, proactive or, you know, taking any risks because they're terrified, right? So he just tells them to just stay here and Gen G rotate. Even though they did nothing, right? They've done literally nothing on the map. And Gen G, they go back to stacking B and they leave Texture here alone. And again, like you look at this map and it's like, okay, you are playing Jet. So, you know, you are playing an agent that can maybe get out of this. But this isn't really necessarily a spot that you'd love to be in on the A site on your own. Right, and he actually, you know, eventually does okay here to get out of this Texture. But again, it just goes to show, like, there was no real plan here for Gen G.
Leaving Texture alone.
Texture is alone. One of our players in the MVP running, he's lit up like a bloody Christmas tree, and he has to try and back the hell out. Counter spam, trying to follow the traces, but he's forced to give this one up. Down on the other side of things, not dealt with in time. Jogamo forced to just back away. There's 27 seconds left. Gen G, they got players in. Trying to play this one a bit fast and loose. The wall up through onto one of the angles. Asus dropped down. Will there be kills? Will he collected? Will there be kills? But they claimed! Fallen with the movement and the Hunter's Fury. Pushes them back to the brink. Gen G 12, but they give it up. It's a save again!
So in this round, you can see a couple things happening there, right? Gen G's panic of, you know, over-rotating and just essentially guessing, and this time happening to guessing wrong. But you can also see the terror that Leaf had caused them in some of those earlier rounds, right? Where he's late lurking somewhere or whatever. Like, the spike, you know, is getting planted. These guys just don't move, right? Like, they legit don't move. You know, they're terrified. And I do mean terrified of, you know, someone being there, right? Like, you take a look at this. They tap the spike. It doesn't go down, you know. I mean, Karen's not moving. Foxy9 goes back, right? So we've still got two players on B. And it must be said, whilst all this is happening, Ash, like, we have to watch Ash here as well, right? Because he's the first death in this. So he's in a spot like, okay, we're playing retake A, right? We just are. Like, there's nothing we can really do about that. We're going to have to retake on A, whatever. So why on earth are you doing that? Why? And then why are you doing this? It doesn't make any sense. Right, why have you done this? Like, you didn't need to drop down necessarily to begin with, and then you definitely didn't need to swing out. You know, if you wanted to just like stay, you know, like back here and like, you know, use this cover behind him and just kind of stay on this angle, like that's not too bad because the Sage Wall is on the other side, right? So, you know, it's not the worst thing in the world because you'd hope that Munchkin could be able to cover you from this side, you know, or Texture like between them. So that's not the worst thing in the world. But swinging out again, you've got two players on the other side of the map here. Right, you've got no util with this. This is just my Sova taking a dry swing against the full team. And giving up his life. And then Texture dies from the Sova ult and a bit of spam as well. And then the round is over again. And then all of this, of course, culminated with round number 24. And in this one, hey, they actually do come up with a proactive early round idea. They go for the push towards mid. Which, you know, hey, they did something. They decided to do something as a team early in a round. So that was at least positive, right? But the problem was, at this point, it was a bit too late, and G2 again come up with a nice call of, you know, having Trent fake like it's going to be the full A hit. But again, these guys, like, you know, they instantly rotate. Yeah, we've seen some Sova stuff. You've got an alarm bot here that they haven't triggered yet. So that's the thing, right? When you are in this situation, you just lose trust of your teammates to be able to do a good job, right? So you think you're just scared, and so you just react. And obviously, as we see, it's a nice call by G2. It seems like a really good understanding of G2 of, you know, Gen G. They were panicked. They were nervous. They were making mistakes like this. They weren't trusting their teammates. Valorant exploited it very well. And even though Munchkin does get the first kill here, this was only going to go one way.
Munchkin, he's alone doing this. He hears the use of the paranoia. It's a good connection inside the smoke, though, dominating the angle. Shots are fired, wrapping around him, though. He's caught that timing, and it's a bullet to the back of the dome. Leaf, instant correction, traded out, and the wall is still up for the safe plant. Ults are online. Gen G, they're playing for overtime. G2 playing to close this out. Lockdown to Hunter's Fury committed. An ult for an ult. Waiting patiently. Util to come back online. Smokes are blooming, blossoming. Fuel is up. Players are set in their position. A dash forwards, but texture's gone. G2, ever a hero, ever a miracle team. They're looking to put the fear of